All right, so I'm in my office, and I'm going to demonstrate creating a tiled map service in ArcGIS server. Now I'm not going to go through the full lecture. It's just going to be the portion of the lecture where we talk about tiled services and walk through it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I've already loaded ArcMap up with the layer that I want to publish. I've already converted the data to Web Mercator. I will say, as I said in class, that this step is not as important for a tiled map service. And the reason for that is that the data, once it's actually already tiled, doesn't need to be reprojected every time another piece of the data is requested. So when I pan and zoom around the map, if they're already tiles, they've already been drawn, so they don't need to be reprojected. But this data has been projected to Web Mercator so that it can display. Now, regardless, the layers, under layers, the data frame itself, the coordinate system should be Web Mercator. So make sure that that's the case. I've done that as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start the process. So under File, I say Share as Service. Okay. I'm going to select Publish a Service. You could also select Overwrite an existing service if you wanted to. And now I'm going to name this counties underscore. I'm going to name it tiled underscore counties. And I'm going to put it in the Raber folder. And hit continue. All right, now at this point, all of the options will appear that we can modify. And in order to make this a tiled map service, I have to go down to caching. All right. So there are a number of options here, and they're not all on this screen, but I'll start to talk about the ones on this screen and attempt to reproduce most of what I mentioned before. So by default, this says draw this map service dynamically from data. So if we don't make any changes to this option, it will be a dynamic map service. However, if we choose this option, we're turning it from a dynamic map service to a tiled map service. Okay. Now, technically, we still have to create the tiles for it to become a fully tiled service. So after we're done here, we can elect to generate the tiles automatically, or we could say, okay, well, don't create the tiles until you go about, until they're used by the user. In other words, until somebody puts them in leaflet and they pan and zoom around the map. Okay. Tiling scheme is always going to be this: ArcGIS Online, Bing Maps, Google Maps. You can create your own tiling scheme, but we're going to leave it like this for this course. In other words, we're going to make a tiling scheme that can be used in a typical map document. I mean, in a typical web mapping API. All right. The next one here is the scale levels that are available to be utilized by the user. And obviously, if you choose a scale level that is very high, it will get larger. Look how the estimated cache size goes from, for just doing the very large view of the world, the estimated cache size is only 5 megabytes. If we make it very large, now all of a sudden it's 118 terabytes. So if we cached all that data, it wouldn't fit on this computer. So we can't do that. One option that we can do is to only cache part of the data. I'm going to go ahead and leave this all the way down to 19. But I'm going to change this to build cache manually after the service is published. And then go to advanced settings. Here, as you can see, I have the option to modify the cache scale. So I'm going to change this so that now I'm not caching down to the lowest level anymore. Or I could change it to right there. So now I'm only caching only the very highest things. Okay? Only the very highest zoom levels. So here I would cache all the way down to the smallest level. What I'm going to do is check create tiles on demand. Okay? If I do this, I don't need to worry about how large the cache is because it's only going to create the cache for those areas that get visited. So the potential is that it grows to 119 terabytes, but by default it'll be 0. It won't actually create the cache for an area until I zoom to that area. The other thing that I could do here is that I could cache only part of the map. I want to change this to the current extent of the map. Notice that when I do that, all of the disk space size changes so that it only will cache those areas within this map view here. Okay. I could make it so that it only cached in Mississippi or only cached in Louisiana. I could do that one of two ways. I could actually zoom in to Mississippi and then change this. I have to change it out of current extent of the map and then back to current extent of the map. It didn't change too much. The other way I could change it is that I could import from a feature class. If I had a feature class that represented just Mississippi, I could have it zoom to just that feature class. Or I could do that for an area as small as I wanted. All right. So at this point, I can go ahead and publish the data. I hit publish. I probably should have, yep, so I'm going to say, okay, okay to copy those to the server. I probably should have made sure that I didn't have any errors, and I don't. But now it's publishing. And it's going to take a few minutes to publish. Remember, I'm not pre-caching any of the layers at this point, or any of the levels at all. I'm telling it to create the tiles on demand. So it's still going to be a tiled map service, but none of the tiles are going to be created until after I actually consume the service. All right, it's still copying up there. In class, I did also demonstrate how you could go onto advanced again, and you could choose between an exploded or a compressed a cache. And there's really no reason to do that in practice, to choose. always choose the compressed version because it'll be smaller. But the exploded version does allow you to actually see on the server the cache that gets created. But I did that only as a demonstration. All right, so we went ahead and published that, and now we can use it. Something I didn't mention in class that I'll mention now is that we can update a cache at any time. And for example, we could say manage map server cache scales, and we could choose a service that exists in our server. Here's our server. Choose the service I just created, which is tiled counties. And we could say, oh, well, what if we don't want a certain scale? You just go in here and remove it, and then run it, and it would remove that scale. We could also add a scale in. It becomes a little bit harder because we have to actually know what the scale should be. But you can always go look at a default value in order to find that out. It might actually say it in here. No, it doesn't. That one will allow you to add or remove scales for a map. This one will tell you about the status. I can input a service here. Okay. I can also use an area of interest to only cache a certain area. Let's say I want to rebuild the cache just for that area. Do that. And say OK, and then I'll run through and do that just a little area right there. It'll probably still take a little while because it's going all the way down to a very detailed level. So we won't wait for that to finish. But now if I go to WMAP 68 ArcGIS Services REST, and I see Raber, and I go to Raber tiled counties, just click on ArcGIS JavaScript API, I can see the tiled map service I just created. Notice that it takes a long time to draw the first time. Okay. It's going to take a little while to draw the first time because those tiles weren't drawn. But now, as soon as I zoom out and then zoom back in here. Now if I zoom back into the previous view, it draws very quickly. In fact, as I move around, all those tiles have been drawn. Okay, so it draws quickly. If I try to pan far away, there we go. I made it so that it needs to see they came in because they weren't drawn yet. Okay. But once they're drawn, they'll be drawn for anybody that comes to the website. And they'll draw very, very quickly. Okay, this finally finished, so that's good. All right, a few other things that I forgot to mention that I should mention. You cannot turn layers on and off in a tiled map service. They're just always on. Every layer that you have on is displayed. They're meant to be used more as base maps or static maps. You could make several tiled map services and stack them up like a sandwich. In other words, you could have a tiled map service as a base map, and then another layer, and then you could have a tiled map service on the very top that represented the labels. So you could sandwich two tiled map services around another map service. It was created in a different manner. All right, what else do I need to say here? Map services, tiled map services, once they're actually tiled to disk, will draw much faster. So that's one of the major advantages. But they do take up a lot of space. So basically, you're trading with tiled map services. You need a lot of disk space. With dynamic map service, you need a lot of with dynamic map services, you need a lot of processing power on your computer. All right. I can't really think of anything else, but if you have additional questions about this concept, please ask me. Send me an email, ask me in class, and we'll go ahead and stop there. The assignment for this week was to publish your own data as a tiled map service and then consume it in a Leaflet. And there's an example in Leaflet on how to do that. You should be able to do that. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. We'll see you in a couple weeks.